high, alone inside. He's got the breakaway with the touch to the right. Goal! Everything you wanted from this debut. It's Brandon By. Taking a shot with the left. Goal! Isaac Frank from 25 yards out. The equalizer. Will Kidd with the touch of the goal. It's a go-ahead goal. Minneapolis City.
This is the People's Pitch Podcast, the official podcast of your Minneapolis City Soccer Club, brought to you by Summit Brewing Company.
Welcome to the People's Pitch Podcast, the official podcast of Minneapolis City Soccer Club. I'm your host, John, and for the first part of a two-part episode this week, I will be without my better half, Nate Morales, as I embark on a solo journey. But fear not, listeners, his silky voice will make an appearance later in this episode. This week, we will start off by diving into the game of soccer, but as always, we have some city news for you. Player signings roll in, and we have some more birds that are going to be flying with us this summer, so we'll dive into the recent signing that happened, I believe, today or yesterday, depending on when you listen to this. It was announced also this week that we are a go for one preseason friendly, a high-profile friendly with a fairly famous club. We'll give you some details around that. And I have a special guest in-house with me, literally in my house, to dive into his thoughts on soccer and perhaps give you a deeper look into what shaped me when it comes to the game of soccer. So let's dive in. Everyone has that person that introduces them to something, and it triggers their somewhat maybe insane obsession. And for this show, my host that I'm going to have with me is the person who introduced the game to me. And I like to equate this person to what I've done for my actual host, Nate. Is, he was introduced to the game by his stepson, but I think me bringing him into this ecosystem, or my soccer ecosystem, kind of got him further bitten by that soccer bug. But like I mentioned, for me, it's no doubt that soccer is my obsession. I literally think about it, talk about it, watch it, instruct it, or play it every day of my life. And that is not a joke. Every day of my life. But there was a beginning for me, and it all started when I was 3 feet high, a little sponge that latched onto a sport that when I fast forward to today, I could really never have imagined where it took me. And I'm pleased to welcome the person who started it all for me to our show this week, my father, Soccer Hall of Famer, Coach of the Year, and the person we all have to thank for introducing me to the game, and that is Andy Bizworm. So, Dad, thank you so much for joining us and agreeing to be on the show. I'm really excited to talk to you today.
Well, thanks, Jonathan. I appreciate it. And this is actually the first time I've ever talked on a podcast. And so Jonathan asked me to kind of start out with my history. And what I suggested was, well, I was born on a stormy night. And he said, no, Dad, let's not go back that far. Let's kind of concentrate on soccer. I said, oh, okay, we'll forget that portion. But yes, I mean, my soccer career started back in Germany, where I was born, and I was there for 10 years of my life, and in a small village in Baden-Württemberg, for those of you that are familiar with Germany. But my time there was basically, I kind of grew up in this small village, and soccer was my only sport. I enjoyed it from the very beginning, but it was not organized soccer like you see today. It was basically getting together with other classmates or friends. We had basically one soccer ball for the entire, group that we had there, and my God, if we ever lost it, we were just about done with.
It was time for a new sport?
That's correct. New sport at that point. And only one boy had the soccer ball. The rich kid in the village had the soccer ball. So he didn't play very well, but we dragged him along anyway because he had the ball. But we grew up, again, not like you see today, where children, from 3 years on up are already in somewhat organized soccer presentations.
And paying for it.
And paying for it also, yes. Believe me, we didn't pay for it whatsoever. But what we learned was, and we didn't have other coaches or other senior players that were around us. It was just learning, kicking the ball around. Sometimes we weren't on the field. We just ended up, in kind of the front street where we bounced the ball up against a building. And, sometimes when I see these kids in Brazil or Argentina in their small villages, I said, my God, that's kind of how that's how we did it also.
So it was basically the free play model, no structure, just getting out there, trying things, just kicking the ball and kind of latching onto it.
Correct. Yes, and that's kind of how we did it. We had no formal games against other teams, and but I grew up with it. My brother was the next. He was the higher boy in the family, and he grew up with soccer as well. My senior brother up ahead of him didn't play much soccer whatsoever, so it was just the two of us in our family. And beyond that, my father was not the one that got us into the sport and drove us heavily into that. It was on our own that we got to love the sport.
So if Opa wasn't the person who introduced Uncle Hans to it, did he just fell in love with it himself, or was there anyone that maybe like a friend of his that pushed him into it?
What kind of helped me is that some of our neighbors who actually played on the senior team in our town, which is called Oberdorf, and I followed their games religiously. I was there at all games, and I was the ball boy, sometimes the only ball boy running around the entire field, but I just got so so incensed with the sport and loved it so much in my heart that the older players liked it also, and the fact that sometimes they even snuck me onto the bus, which had to be paid for by the players to go in another town, and they dragged me along and hid me in the back of the bus, and that
the ball
way,
bag and
right? Yeah. I had the 2 or 3 balls that they had for a team, and I had to hide in the back so I could go along, and my parents knew it, but they kind of understood that I really loved the sport.
So, quick question. So, like, to kind of keep going on this, and maybe to try to narrow it down a little bit, I can't really explain or identify why soccer became my obsession. Like, I literally can't think of one thing that, like, clicked in my brain that says, like, this is what you're going to be obsessed with. Is there anything, like, within that following the senior team, or any trigger point that you can remember? You might not have it, like I can't figure it out, that was like, this is why it brings me so much joy and this is why it's my obsession.
Well, for that point, let me put it this way. When Jonathan grew up, or when he was born, my entire focus point in life was, this boy is going to be playing soccer. He is going to enjoy it whether he likes it or not.
Yeah, this is the point in the show where I tell you guys I actually hate soccer. Thanks a lot, Dad.
No, we had him in the crib. We hung soccer balls above his crib and dragged his foot alongside of it, did everything we could. But then again, and he loved it even as a boy. We destroyed so many things in our living room and had our...
I definitely want to get to that at some point.
Yes, but we got him involved in soccer from the very beginning. So
what was your trigger point? As far as like what when you were a kid, when you were trying to get these guys to sneak you onto that bus, and you were hanging around the field and being part of it, was there something that bit you to make that such a passionate part of your life?
I'll tell you, there was one incident that made me absolutely, and I realized how much passion I had for the sport, and it was actually a game in my town in Oberdorf, and some other village came in and they were playing, and I was standing next to the goal, and it was one instance where the opposing forward beat the last defender, and he was storming towards the goal. The goalie came out, and that forward just lifted that ball over him, and it was literally just going and bouncing into the goal. And I'm standing beside the goal. I rushed onto the field, and I kicked the living hell out of that ball to go off to the side. Everybody was stunned.
Like mid-game.
Yes, it was a regular game, and the people on the sideline, the few that we had there, were laughing living daylights, and the opposing players were just screaming at the referee, and the goalie came and hugged me and everything else. And I thought, boy, this is the game. I want to be part of it.
So cheating was your passion.
Yes, Cheating was my first element. No losing whatsoever.
So when you came to the States as a kid, and it was at that time no professional league here in the United States, no youth soccer setup like we have in the modern game today, and there for sure was no ability to watch soccer pretty much around the clock on the internet. Or there was no internet, but then there was hardly TV broadcasts at that point, specifically for soccer. What was it like when you got here?
When we first came to Milwaukee, which was our hometown at that point, there were no small youth leagues that we see today. You basically went to a club in the Milwaukee area, and
An ethnic club.
Being of German background, we went to the Bavarians because my brother was old enough. He was in his teens at that time, and he started playing. I could not play with the club at that time, but I went along with him. And, when they were doing their warm-ups or doing their practices, etc., I would just use a soccer ball of my own, kick it around a little bit. And in some of the practices, they actually let me go in on it. But again, I had no formal training coming in my youth, and I'm talking about my grade school time period.
So like 12, 13-ish?
Right. Okay. And at that point, once I got into the high school level, freshman high school, 8th grade freshman level, then they had intermediate, they call them intermediate soccer teams at the club, and then juniors. They were mostly at the high school level, and that is how I really got involved in the more structured part of my soccer life.
So you mentioned the Bavarians. We talk extensively about them on our show. They're kind of the model that we at least on the field, that we try to achieve for constant winners. What was the club itself like? I mean, you dove into it a little bit, but there was a senior team, and when did they incorporate actual juniors? I believe it was called, right? Or youth soccer. Like, what age groups did they have back then that laddered into the majors of the first team?
Again, at the time, let's say with your 8th grade time period and your freshman high school, that's when we started out.
Okay.
And the people that coached it were players that played on the major team.
Okay.
The Bavarians, and they were Germans, also living here in the United States. There was just about 100% of that team, back in the late 50s, early 60s, were straight German players. Mm-hmm. And sometimes listening to them on the field, I heard them even yelling to each other in German. And but they're the ones who started us in soccer. And believe me, their practices were geared to how do you trap a ball? How do you hit a ball? How do you shoot a ball? Passing, looking around, talking to each other. What do you do? And one of the things I remember they really focused on is what do you do when you're not near the ball or you don't have the ball? You're not just standing there to watch what the guy does with the ball. You got to also do something. And they really pressed that aspect of it. And, we constantly said, well, when can we play a scrimmage, and the coach yelled at us, today we're not scrimmaging whatsoever.
Not ready yet.
You're not ready yet until you know how to trap that ball and do things and shoot it and pass it. And I see what you're doing when you're not in possession of the ball. That's how I can see whether you're a player or not. Mm-hmm. And that was very important for us, and that's how we learned. And we didn't play until we did in the intermediate teams. We had a local league, and at that point we started playing. And our coaches were never really thrilled or emphasized the winning aspect. Did we win? Yes, a lot of games
Bavarians
we did
are
win.
perennial winners. That
Yes.
was what one of my next questions was going to be. Was it always like that?
They were geared for winning. The Bavarians were, but sometimes we played, our coaches would tell us when we lost, and maybe lost even heavily, and he told us, there is nothing wrong with the way you played. And
Just got beat.
We just got beat. We got beat by better players, maybe a little bit older than we were. But he said, the way you handled the ball, the way you trapped the ball, passed the ball, shot the ball, I'm happy with what you're doing.
Mm-hmm. So, kind of hitting the forward button a little bit on the Bavarians. They and I want to get your take on a little bit of this. So, it's well known they've played professional teams, they've played national teams. As a club, they've traveled globally to play. I think one of the famous stories is Uncle Hans's trip where the tour bus caught fire on the Autobahn, and they all had to throw their luggage off the roof rack before all their possessions got burned. But they're well traveled, and I have a memorable game that I remember from being a kid, and that's when they played the U.S. national team in 1990 in Milwaukee before a German Fest weekend, and that was the tune-up for them to go to Italy for the World Cup. That to me is so massive. There is no amateur team in the country in this day and age that would play the U.S. national team. I mean, they might play in a World Cup tune-up behind closed doors, like they played Stanford because they were training there and they just needed a different set of guys to play against. But they're not going and traveling to Milwaukee to play against the Bavarians before they fly out to Italy. So that was memorable for me. Maybe if you go back in the day a little bit, was there any of those friendlies or matches that were memorable to you that the Bavarians played?
Yes, there were several memorable games. I mean, to me, the biggest things as far as outside league games were the games where they, during the summertime, invited professional teams from Germany, VfB Stuttgart, Bayern Munich also came.
Freiburg, I believe.
Yes, they came, and there were several other ones that are no longer in the Bundesliga, but they were top professional players that came, and all of them pretty much beat our team, but some of them enjoy the competition from a straight amateur type of environment.
They weren't really in jeopardy of getting injured against a bunch of yahoos, basically, and the guys they played against, although they maybe probably were better than, they could play. And that's probably where the respect came from.
Yes, I mean, they were playing, a team that was going, that they were going to be afraid of. And that sometimes happens when you're playing a really bad team that is more energetic and
Kicking
more
you
physical, and you're technically a lot better, and you start worrying about them coming in at you.
And you're essentially on holiday because your season's over.
Yes.
you don't want to be picking up a broken ankle or something because you're playing against people that they can't do it. So was there a specific game that you remember that was a good one?
The one I remember was against VfB Stuttgart. And that was actually the state where we came, and they were our professional team then. And that one was probably more in my memory. And did we lose? I think we lost like 5-1, something like that.
It's not bad against a Bundesliga team.
No, it wasn't bad. And then some of our players were actually coming. They came from all over Germany, and some of them, some of them were training, got some formal training already in Germany
before they came to the
United States.
Sure. So let's fast forward a bit. So you finished high school in Milwaukee, and you went to both of our alma maters, UW and Milwaukee. Before college soccer was really a thing, I kind of know this answer, but folks don't. Like, was there a team when you were in college in the 70s? Like, did it form while you were there, or what was college soccer like? 'Cause there were some schools that had a soccer team, but Milwaukee maybe didn't, maybe did.
I do remember that they, for example, in the Midwest, I do remember one of the few that had, soccer. And like I said, I graduated in 1966. And I looked at a couple of schools, and the closest one I could find that had soccer was Michigan State.
It's not really close.
No,
Yeah.
wasn't close.
Yeah.
They didn't have any universities playing soccer.
So even like Ohio State, that seems like maybe one that would have it.
I don't know if Ohio State had it. I know there were some out east that had it.
Like Rutgers.
Right. Some of the...
Syracuse, maybe. Some of the Big East type schools.
Yes. And... of course, my parents said, you're not going
to
there.
Play soccer at Michigan State.
You're staying in Milwaukee, and you're going to the University of Milwaukee, Wisconsin.
You're going to get a job, and you're going to like it.
Yes. Yeah.
So after school, on the brink of the 70s, kind of turning into the 70s from the 60s, you went into the military, and then you were stationed back in Germany. So when you went back from the time you left as a youth and where soccer was when you were there to the time you went back in the 70s, tell us a little bit about what you saw there and maybe the differences of how things progressed from a perspective of that much time differential between giving the game time to grow.
Mm-hmm. Sure. As Jonathan mentioned, the Bavarians had a system also. Basically, they had 4 teams: intermediate, junior, reserve team, and then they had the major team in my era. And I got up to playing in the major team in my college days, but it was getting close to the end of my college time period, and I was in ROTC, and this was during the Vietnam time, and the answer was, you're not sticking around after college, you're getting in the military immediately. So, and because of my German background, I was fortunate enough, I did go to Germany, and when I was stationed in Heidelberg, Germany, and what happened was when they found out that I had a soccer background, they said, guess what? You're going to organize the American military soccer team here in Germany. And
here, you go do it.
Right, exactly. And I think we had one other officer that was playing, he was a captain. And he left, and they said, okay, Bizworm, now you're the second lieutenant. Guess what? You're in charge of the team now. And
that's very military sounding.
Yes.
Yeah. You're next man up.
And so we basically looked for players around Germany that played soccer, and it was a hunt. And believe me, we had some guys that, hadn't been brought up at all with soccer. So it was tough getting players organized. We did get to play the German army. We played against the British. We played against the Dutch, their military teams, and I still remember playing against the British military team, and they had several players that had come out of the professional level.
Like
and
doing their civil service.
Were doing their service requirements. And before the game, all they talked about was the one time that the Americans beat them in the Olympics, and they could never forget that. And it was the first time they ever lost to the Americans in the Olympics. Offhand, I can't remember the exact date of that. But they were very nice to us. And
the whistle blew, and they smacked you with the Union Jack.
And they beat. Can I say it? But they beat the living shit out of us. We didn't have it. We didn't have the capabilities at that time. But again, it was hard work. Not only did I coach, but I played on the team, etc. And then once I was finished with my military time in Germany, I ended back in Ohio at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base.
So as far as soccer in general, when you went back to Germany, that in the 70s is kind of where the framework of like the bigger clubs in Europe having their academies, building their systems, going away from just being one team to having this soccer ecosystem, and that advanced to what we have now. When you look at the professional game when you went back, was it still the same? As when you left. I remember you mentioning that. You watched the 1954 World Cup, like that was high level soccer. But from a club perspective in Germany, they're very successful. The Spanish Real Madrid won a lot of Champions League or European Cups back then. But did you see a shift in the game at all, like from the early days in Europe to where it was when you got back?
Yes, there was a shift. There was a lot more formal training where basically players that were thinking eventually going into the professional level went to professional schools and the training schools that they had there. And, this was at the high school level, but their focus was on soccer, technical soccer. And believe me, the technical aspect was so important. And I know we'll talk about that later on, but I remember talking to a couple of players and they said, this is what they're teaching us, this is what we go through. And again, even like when I saw in my earlier times, it was not so important of whether you won the next game at this level. It's what you learned and your technical capability. Obviously, it had to grow to what they thought was the level that you needed to get into the professionals.
There's probably a grading system at that point, like like in school. You're A+ in this facet of the game. You're ahead of that guy in front of you who got less on the test score, right? It's really interesting that you mentioned the not necessarily focused on winning aspect, because you look at American soccer at our level with Minneapolis City, or at the USL level, all the leagues that feed up into MLS, and then you look at the youth ranks, it's so focused on winning that everyone loses sight of the fact that you're really preparing players for that next level. And the youth ranks, you have outlets for kids and players, both boys and girls, to just play if they want to play, but the serious outlets are the ones that are driving you up the track, and it's still focused on winning. You could produce, out of 18 players on a team, 5 professionals, but if you didn't win the state cup, or you didn't win, whatever, you didn't travel and win this showcase, your club is looked at as not a good club. So it's really interesting to hear that, like, back in the 70s, it was the reason why the Germans were building good players, and probably the Dutch as well, and the British and most Europeans, was because they were really focusing on development and sharpening skills, because they knew winning comes with prepared players. And at our level, we talk a lot about we're preparing players who this may be their springboard to the next step, or this is the end destination for guys. But we're still going to be sharpening them in the event that maybe soccer does move into a category where they can become something. So it's really interesting that you mentioned that. So you ended back up in the United States in the end of the 70s, into the early 80s with Mom, and then my older sister Diana. We'll talk about coaching, but when you got back here, so you basically did a soccer shift. You grew up in Germany, you shifted and went and grew up, in your teen years to Milwaukee, and that was that soccer. Then you played that until you went back to Germany, and then you had your military soccer, and but now you're back in the States. You're in Ohio, where I was born, and you're back, and you have your day job in the military. How did you get back into soccer? Not the coaching side, because we'll get into that in a second, but how did you insert yourself into soccer when you got back again into another another situation?
Well, when I got back, I was stationed again at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, which is in the Dayton, Ohio area. And what I saw when I first got there was the open area. They have a huge museum there. They have plenty of fields there. And then all of a sudden I saw some soccer fields, and I informed myself what's going on over there. And they had recreational teams primarily. And
Was it like adult recreation? Or
adult recreation,
Yeah, okay.
right? And so I got into it, and was it easy for me to play? Technically, yes. There were some guys that, wanted to play, learn soccer. There were a lot of Americans that wanted to get into the soccer thing.
Well, there's probably, like it is today, there's some foreign-based players who were working in the military and they were stationed there, or like, at National Cash Register or IBM or whatever that was in Dayton, Mead, the paper company. Like, I'm sure they had some foreign-born guys that were just living in the community that could play.
Yes, we did have some foreign guys that were in the, but again, it was a recreational league. But we were lucky, and what
Got to
the
play
teams,
soccer.
teams we played against, every now and then I could recognize a player that definitely knew his stuff. And you're right, he wasn't stationed. Some people were stationed there also at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, and some were from the local economy.
Well, first of all, John, I'm loving this interview that you did with your dad. I really do envy the ability that you have to be able to sit down and talk at length with your dad, record it around something that you guys that you've come to love together, and that you both share, like a passion you both share. I think that's really cool. It's a lot of things. It's something that a lot of people might not have, including me.
Well, I was a little worried that it wasn't going to go as well as it did. I thought it turned out fantastic.
Yeah.
But my dad had brain surgery like a year ago, and sometimes his memory is a little less than to be desired. And but it was cool that not only was he able to draw back to some earlier things that we'll go over here, but to be able to draw a good understanding of where he thinks old school ways of thinking are still applicable, and how fundamentals still have not changed in soccer.
Yeah, fundamentals matter, man. There are a couple things that I picked up on that I do want to bring back and talk about with you. First of all, your dad's soccer foundation came from this place of free play, which was really interesting to hear.
I knew you'd love that part.
Well, and not only that, but like, it was funny that he said that he would see and hear how all these people in Brazil or Argentina or Spain or Italy like came into the game and playing in their neighborhood clubs, and he thought like, that was me too. I did that too. So it is
Right.
something very unifying that they have, that happens all over the world. It was funny that he was just like 10, right? And he was just fucking around, or at least he was younger than 10. And
Yeah.
what I love that he said is it was on our own that we got to love the sport. I mean, how different is that from today's environment in the States, right?
Right. You rarely ever see that, right? And even it's like the 1% of kids that kick a ball around and just try to get familiar with it, and Dan on our 100th episode joked about how he'd come over to my house, and I was like, all right, today we're gonna kick soccer balls into that trash can from this this distance with our left foot and then our right foot, and that that was how I learned the game. And you just get comfortable with a soccer ball, and then when you're put into a pressured or more structured environment, you excel.
Yeah. I think, it's similar to me growing up playing baseball, right? And it was really, there were so few kids in the block that you couldn't feel the full team of 9 ever.
Right.
And you're of course not feeling a team of 18. So really it's just like pickle in the middle. It's hitting games. It's running games. It's dumb stuff like that are really
Throwing,
like
catching, whatever.
Yeah, that really build on the fundamentals of the game, or create a basis for those fundamentals as a little kid that then you bring to life when you play more organized. And I think that's really cool that your dad experienced the same thing.
Yeah, I think so too. And you can tell when you go and you watch soccer players, even at like our level, you look at like Martin and Whitney, and not to say that other guys on our team didn't grow up playing maybe less structured soccer, but you can tell with like those guys, they're so comfortable with the ball at their foot that they don't even think about that there's a ball down there. They just go through the motions so effortlessly.
Yeah. I also thought that it was really interesting to hear about at what age he was allowed to start playing when he joined the Bavarians, right? Or allowed to start even like practicing with the Bavarians, because there really was no youth soccer in the in the late 50s, early 60s per se, right? Because there was really no soccer organizations outside of what he called the ethnic clubs in Milwaukee. I think if we told American parents that their kids cannot play and won't be playing competitively until they're about 13 years old, 14 years old, and that after that they'd still be positioned to develop into good players, I think they would laugh in your face.
Right.
Like, yeah. But what we miss out when we start drilling kids at a young age is creating this certain soccer IQ, right?
Right. And he talked a lot about how his coach would say, like, today you're not ready to play in a scrimmage today. Like, you have to nail down these other things first.
Yeah.
And think, you talked about how parents might laugh in my face, but can you imagine telling a parent who comes to maybe watch a practice you're coaching and they're like, well, when are you going to actually play soccer?
Do we have any games scheduled? No.
You're like, no, we don't. They're literally not ready to play the game yet, and it goes beyond, scoring goals, and you have to learn these other pieces first. Yeah, it was definitely interesting. And I mean, it could have been a little bit of sign of the times where, those organizations were focused around, a men's club versus trying to bring kids into it.
Yeah.
But eventually it clicked that you can start, teaching kids the game at a younger age. And then, that's where we are today.
That scrimmage thing is an interesting contrast, though, between his earlier development in Germany, just, this free play model, just kicking around, playing with your friends, kicking it off the buildings, things like that. And then, once he joined the Bavarians, this idea that you're actually not going to play, you're going to learn how to trap the ball. You're going to learn how to better dribble, how to put touches on your passes, things like that.
How to move without the ball.
Yeah. And I think as long as that's at like a certain age, it feels like, maybe their age was arbitrarily 8th grade, 9th grade, whatever. But like, that's kind of what we talked about a couple weeks ago, that only at a certain point should you start to really work with kids on the skills and their development once they're almost grown up.
Right.
That's funny.
If you actually you play back what he said before that was like, there was only one kid who had a soccer ball in his town.
Yeah. It was the rich kid, and he wasn't even that good.
Right, and they had to play with him, and they're like, they had to beat him up if he wouldn't leave the ball. And if it went in the river, then they had to pick up a new sport.
Yep. But I just think that's interesting that there is that contrast from being in Germany in a small town where there's not a ton of money and you maybe only have one ball, to actually coming to America and finding this like organized club, like definitely a different approach that might not necessarily recognize kind of the impetus for some of these kids to start playing, but still and takes a different approach, but it all worked out in the end.
Well, I liked too how he talked about like, I was trying to dig a little bit deeper into like, the thing that made it click in his head.
Yeah.
When like soccer was his passion. Cause like I even said in the interview, like, if you ask me what that thing is, I don't think I can tell you, it just happened. And with him, it was like my grandfather didn't like teach him the game or like introduce him to it. It was his friends.
Yeah.
It was like a common collective of kids that got into soccer, and the same was with my Uncle Hans, his older brother, who was like the person who like introduced him to it at a deeper level just by organically being around him playing at an organized level. So it was real interesting how that kind of took shape for him, that he didn't have a thing that made it click either. It was just getting together and playing a sport. It could have been, baseball or football or whatever, or basketball. Yeah. It could have been whatever. But it was more of a community collective of people who just wanted to like be active.
Yeah, even when you pressed him on it, he couldn't tell you that there was one moment. He could only express to you like this time that it came to life. You know,
Right.
you know what I mean? It was like almost like I didn't even know I was so passionate for the game until as an 8-year-old boy, I ran onto the field and kicked a live ball away from so the goal wouldn't go in.
So part of what was like special for me during this whole thing was that like I never really like dove deep into that stuff when I was younger with my dad, like and like hearing some of those stories about the old country. But I do remember him telling me that story at one point, and that he goes into it a little bit deeper off air with me, and he said that the opposing team started to chase him around the field.
Just this little kid.
Yeah, and then like his older brother and the guys on the team had to like restrain them to like he's just a kid, like just relax. But like he had so much passion for his hometown team that he was running on the field and stopping a ball from the end line.
I mean, it's seriously some like Bad News Bears or some Sandlot shit, right?
It totally is.
Like precocious kids that just make the game their own. I loved it.
Yeah.
In the end, it kind of when he's talking about the end of his developmental cycle with the Bavarians in Milwaukee, I do love that he talks about his early Bavarians coaches putting little to no emphasis on winning. Like, I want to get your take on how you feel like that builds successful players in the end, because it must have. The Bavarians are a storied team, right? Mm-hmm. Like, to take that approach from, the 8th, 9th grade, at the 8th, 9th grade level, where winning doesn't really matter, what does that do for a player at by the time they reach 12th grade and move on to like men's league kind of stuff?
Well, I'm actually like somewhat a product of that, being that I played with the Bavarians as a youth, and like I'm just used to that, where like we get higher up the ladder from a soccer perspective, and your soccer journey continues on to where winning does matter, and it's results driven. But like for me, like if you look at like the modern day player, when you lose a game, it's like it literally is the end of the world for people, and they just can't get past it, and you can get into a funk.
Yeah. And
then one loss turns into 3, and then 3 turns into 5, and then all of a sudden coaches get fired, and there it's just all about the result. And like with me now, like I'm the type of player, like, even in my men's league games, I lose the game and I'm super pissed for like 40 minutes. And then I'm like, whatever, I get to play soccer again another day. And I think that, how that builds a successful player is a good short-term memory.
Yeah.
And it doesn't just go from a results perspective. It goes down to like when they're trying something on the field. Like if you have someone who's so emphasized on executing and winning, when we try to play that 30-yard ball that doesn't quite get there because you don't hit it hard enough, or the wind blows, or whatever it may be, that may ruin their entire game.
Yeah, it didn't work, so I'm not going to do that again.
Right, but the thing that should be taught is do that again, because it's the right thing to do, even though you didn't execute it.
Yep.
And like,
there's like a mental resiliency that needs to that's learned by not always being the best, not always winning, and being able to bounce back from stuff. Because it's okay to be mad when you lose for half hour, 40 minutes, but like at the end of the day, like you said, every decision you make, every mistake you make, every loss you take, I'll be watching you. No, but you have to you have to be able to bounce back and accept that that's just part of it and try again.
Because the thing is that the willingness to try something again that failed is the difference between winning and losing sometimes.
Yeah, and to be honest, isn't that what practice is?
Right.
Like, isn't that like, well, shit, I couldn't pass it correctly the first time. I guess soccer's not for me.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I'm gonna go play squash.
Yep.
But like I could. I have one of those photographic soccer memories where I can like remember plays and things that happened years ago, or I know the score of a game or whatever.
Yeah.
And like I can remember vividly, like as I got more advanced in soccer, like trying something that just didn't work, and literally it being the difference maker of me succeeding on it the next time that led us to a victory. And I don't think you have that a lot in players. I mean, ironic thing was, before my dad and my mom ended up leaving for the weekend to go back home, we were watching it was whatever the Monday Bundesliga game was, and the I think it was Fortuna Dusseldorf was down and against Eintracht Frankfurt, and Eintracht Frankfurt brought in a striker, with 20 minutes to go maybe, and 10 minutes later the guy scores 2 goals and they win the game. But he tried some things early on that just didn't work, and on the game winner he did the same thing. He tried the same thing again and he executed.
Yeah.
And that it literally was the difference. It wasn't that he shied away from something and he went to the second or third option. He trusted his instinct, was like, I can succeed at this because I've hammered home this exact scenario so many times in training. I'm just going to try it. And he did. So I think that eventually it will click in players, but the ones that don't succeed are the ones that aren't okay with failure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think there's something to be said about, it's okay to be in these situations where the pressure is low or lessened, right? Like, it's okay if you don't succeed. It's okay if you don't win, because then you're given that freedom to try things. Whereas, like, if you're in a high pressure situation, people are more willing or more likely to bear down and only stick to things that they know are going to succeed, right? They're not going to try new things. Their creativity level goes out the window, and it's just a matter of, like, head down. I gotta make this happen in the way that I know will work, and that won't always work, unfortunately.
He also mentioned too that, like, and I think was an important thing to take away, is that even when someone kicks your ass and you get beat, like, there's still positives. Like, you can still play good soccer and get beat
By the British.
Yeah, by the British military team with, like, Premier League level talent. No, but, like, the coaches can tell you when you lose that you still played good soccer, and it wasn't your day from a team perspective and on the score sheet. And I think that there's just another added step onto the it's okay to not always win.
Yeah.
Like, if you get used to being okay with failure, that you can draw something from it.
I think there's why I love your talk with your dad, and we'll get more into this next week's show when we get to the second half. But there's a lot of lessons to be taken away as a parent, as a coach, as a player, just about how to approach the game. And I think there is sort of like he said, like, it's okay when your coach, first of all, at half, don't say anything to your players is one thing that he said. Just let them relax and decompress before you start railing into them or grilling them about what they need to do.
Because they may listen to you then.
Yep. But also just like this idea that, everyone played really well. We did what we needed to do, and we just got beat by a better team. Shit happens is kind of a cool way. It's a refreshing approach to hear how to coach, or kind of how to approach that versus, like, screaming and ranting and stomping and throwing a tantrum, which you see more often than not, especially in the Premier League.
Well, it creates a winning mentality, actually, when you can identify when you're getting beat by a team, and it might increase your level. If at halftime a coach is screaming at you to do this and that, there's no room for constructive criticism that might help you be a winner.
Right. One thing I do want to bring up that I thought was funny was that story about when he joined the military, and he ends up in Germany organizing the team and playing against other army teams, and he downplayed it. You brought it up just now, but he downplayed it, that, like, some of these players on the English team were, maybe already in the pros, maybe low level kind of a thing. And
some
you
World
told
Cup
me
winners.
Instead, they're like, he's playing against the World Cup winning keeper.
Yeah. Yeah.
God, could you imagine just, like, finding yourself at an army base squaring off against, like, Harry Kane?
Right. Yeah, exactly. And the funny thing too is that, he was like, yeah, the British were really nice to us before the game, and telling us about how they were embarrassed about losing in the Olympics, and then
they owed us one.
Yeah, and they kicked the living shit out of them. And it's like, it goes down to the some low level military pickup game.
Hey, however you can salvage your pride, right?
Right, exactly.
So one other thing on some level, what I enjoyed was that on some level the environment he had in Milwaukee in the '60s when he's joining the Bavarians, like he said, really you had ethnic teams to join and that's it. The Croatians we know about, there were Hungarian teams and all that stuff. That is really being reproduced today in the Twin Cities, especially, but I'm sure all over the country by East Africans, West Africans, Central and South Americans, right?
Mexican,
yeah, definitely here, but I'm sure elsewhere. And these communities, they form their teams, and the kids play on these teams really because they're the teams that are available, and they're the teams that are accessible. And some play at a really high level. Like Pueblita is a very, very good Mexican team, very, very good Mexican youth squad. But they're not playing against the Sporting St. Croix or the Blackhawks of the league,
right,
of the world, right? In your observation, like how valuable is that experience as an immigrant community? Because I think you have a special appreciation of where the Bavarians club came from and what it has become in Milwaukee. And do you see that those kind of clubs rising to similar prominence potentially around the cities and elsewhere?
I mean, I think so. It's all about opportunity, right? Like, if you don't have the opportunity to get these more immigrant-focused community clubs exposure against the St. Croix and the MTAs of the world, you don't foster their involvement in the soccer community.
Right.
You just restrict it, and that's where like the whole pay-for-play model comes in, and how we're missing out on talent. But I think one thing to take away from what he was saying is that there's a specific, when you go to Milwaukee, even to this day, there's a specific style of play that these ethnic clubs play, and it all goes back to historical reference of how those countries played and the style and like the mystique of things. A lot of people say English teams of old were just long ball to a target striker, and German teams attack as a unit, and South American teams are more, technically focused, and Brazilian teams are more technically focused, and they'll beat you off a dribble. I think that still resonates today, and
yeah.
I think that what we down the road, I think that fostering soccer growth in a country, it's boiled down to the people who are sheltered having exposure to these different ways to play the game, so that they can take their own piece of it away, and it can make them better.
Yeah, one of the things that the Bavarians have in Milwaukee that I hope that someone in the cities ends up being able to carve out is this space where they can develop soccer on their own, right? They've got the beer hall, they've got the fields, they've got the whole complex there where everyone can gather, kids and adults and players and non-players, to enjoy soccer in the Bavarians model. Like, hopefully somebody here in town figures that out and is able to find that land and build that thing for their community.
Yeah, and if you have a checkbook that's heavy and you want to call us, or you can reach out to us, we'd be more than happy to spend those dollars.
Well, John, I'm definitely interested to hear how your dad took those lessons that he learned early in his soccer life and applied them later in life as a coach and as a parent to you. But that's going to have to wait until next week. But in the meantime,
stay tuned.
Stay tuned, everyone. In the meantime, I think this is a really cool segment and a really cool interview, and I'm just hungry for the next one.
Good content, Nate. Good content.
We've got more Crows, people. This week's player announcement is another returner to the murder. That kind of rhymed.
Yep.
Nick Hutton is a longtime member of the Stegman's arm of the club. He is joining us for his second season with Minneapolis City. Last year, he was voted Newcomer of the Year by at least half of the people who do this podcast for his almost immediate contribution to the City attack. Nick Hutton is a winger that possesses world-class speed, and that's no exaggeration. That is literally world-class speed, and he definitely has a hard-nosed, tireless work ethic. Did he come with us to Illinois after his baby was born? Like within a week or two after his baby was born, he was in Aurora?
No, he found out that his wife was pregnant
That's
while
what
he
it
was before the game.
That's what it was. That's not as hard nosed or tireless as I.
And then he scored the game winner.
Then he scores the game winner, which I predicted. But he's not. That's not the that's not the example I was looking for. But still.
Yeah, right. It's a good storyline.
Yep. Please do not let Nick Hutton fool you, folks. He can also pull a trick or two out of his socks to set up a shot with either foot. It's not all speed with this guy. He has played 12 games with Minneapolis City in the last year and a half, I guess. 914 minutes logged with 6 goals and 5 assists, only 1 yellow card. I think just like I just said, his impact was immediate. Like, that's a lot of goals. That's a lot of assists for someone who's really only played 1 season.
Well, you look at the numbers, it's a goal every other game.
Yeah, that's nuts.
And he's not just scoring, he's also setting people up. Mm-hmm. So Hut is a coach's dream, and I don't say that lightly. Like, he really is. He's one of those guys who's nicer than hell off the field. Like, he'll talk to the fans, he'll come to everything, but he is your worst nightmare on it when you are the opposition. I've seen him play for almost 5 years now, and even shared the pitch with him a few times with Stegmans, and it was only a matter of time until he cracked the first team with our MPSL squad. He came to us as a trial player with City before the 2017 season, but there was a log jam at his position at that given time, and it did not allow him to crack through that year. But he did score a peach of a goal against the U of M club team in the preseason, which I thought maybe would have elevated him into the squad, but it just the stars weren't aligned. But he hit the MPSL North last year so hard, and they really didn't know what to do with him. And it's whether you paired him with Will Kidd or Whitney or Siku or Justin Oliver, really anyone you threw him across the field from. And I mentioned this earlier when we talked about things that my dad said. He makes dynamic runs, and he's willing to switch positions like organically throughout the game, and that just creates havoc upon the opposing defense, especially when his counterparts or his friends on the team are picking up on that and filling the space that he's clearing out. And that if you look back into City folklore, the Abdallah Ba banger versus Duluth was actually part of Hutton's doing. He cleared out 3 defenders with a diagonal run that not only created the space in the window for Ba to fire that shot off, but also created some havoc for the goalie to not be able to pick it up because there was so much movement going on. Mm-hmm. So Hutton does a ton of things for you. We're super happy to have him back. And I also hate to tell the MPSL North teams this since we're in the preseason, but he looks bigger and just as fast as last year. So like he's
27 years old and still growing.
Well, yeah,
or however old he is.
It's like what's the SNL character? Bill Brasky.
Yeah,
like he's 9 feet 10 inches, 400 pounds. No, he just looks like he's been working out, and like I said, he hasn't lost any of that speed or drive. So look out, folks. Well, Nate, players are not the only thing that we're announcing this week. We have, we have to tune the boys up against other competition before the season starts.
Yeah. And
we'll have a few of these. This is the first one, and I feel is the high right now on paper the highest profile match that we just announced this week. We'll be hosting the storied Colorado-based super club Harpos FC, and this is fantastic news because not only we really like these guys, but they're the type of club that we've talked about hosting for years now, that are awesome guys, good at soccer and fun off the field. But they walk the walk, much like our frenemies across the border, the Bavarians. They own multiple cups. They'll play anyone, including the Mexican national team, as we found out.
Yes.
We interviewed their heartbeat, Johnny Freeston, in a Gold Cup tune-up. They're also, currently okay with not being attached to lower division soccer like we are. They didn't jump at the chance to get in bed with the MPSL or the UPSL or the USL or whatever SL there is in the United States. But it's just super awesome to have these gents come into town, and we're going to be hitting the field hard and the town hard after with them.
Yeah, I'm really excited for Harpos to come to town. I would say, like, very philosophically aligned with what we're trying to do. Johnny was such a great guest. I think if anyone is interested in learning more about what Harpos is all about and where this weird name comes from and kind of what's going on out there in Colorado, you should definitely listen to our
for sure.
interview of him, which was back in episode 95. We talked to him back in October, and
wow, it was already October.
I know. Can
Wow.
you believe it? Like during
our slow period.
Our slow period, that was our owner operator interview series. That was the way we kicked it off, was with Johnny. So it'll be cool to meet him in person, and great to have that a storied and classy organization in town to be able to sharpen our knives against.
Yep, absolutely.
Let's get the details of this game to the people. Right now, it's looking like it's going to be Saturday, April 27th at Winter Park in Eden Prairie, which is that the Lifetime facility now? Lifetime took it over?
Yep, and the reason why it's there is because there's both an outdoor and an indoor option.
So we can do either or?
I think we're going to probably focus on playing indoors just because we live in Minnesota.
Yeah.
But there's a chance that it could be outdoors if the weather's nice enough, because they have the option for both. But,
that's nice.
Super awesome facility. I mean, there's an NFL team that lived there for years, so it's good.
Yeah, Lifetime has done wonders to turn it into a really cool soccer facility. They do their own version of free play there for kids to show up, and it'll be really great to it's really luxurious, I would say.
Yeah.
Time is TBD, but it's going to be an evening kickoff probably. We usually do about a 7 p.m. kickoff for most of our other games, so more details there, but plan on something later. As far as tickets goes, this is where it gets interesting. This is a members only event. Right now it's looking like it'll be a member plus one, so every member will be allowed to bring a guest. But
maybe not.
We're not really sure yet. And depending on capacity and depending on interest. So if you're really interested in seeing Harpos and knowing that there are other exclusive, preseason games that are going to be announced shortly, I would say get out there and buy a membership to make sure you are at this great match and you get all the other perks that come with being a member. More information on this match and, like I said, any of the other preseason friendlies will be coming out soon. But these are the basics. Circle April 27th on your calendar. It will be, if you're a member, the first opportunity you have to see the new look Crows. What we've got,
returning champs.
Yep, the returning champs. What we've got in the hopper for the 2019 season. I'm super pumped. Yeah. It's coming earlier than I expected, John.
Yeah, it's just around the corner, Nate.
And thus ends tonight's show. Thanks, as always, to our sponsor, Summit Brewing. Thanks to John and his dad for being on the show as well. It is almost spring. That means it's just about Maibach time, my friends, my German friends know. This sippable yet strong set of suds is going to quench your thirst while it helps you forget about the snow that just won't go away. Summit, a more meaningful brew since 1986. If giving back to the community means a lot to you, it is time for you to give to the club that gives back. Minneapolis City is a 501c3 that provides a safe, reliable, and fun environment for young people to play the beautiful game. Look for us all summer, spring, fall, maybe even the winter, playing with kids in parks and community centers around the city, and consider a tax-deductible donation to what is a true city-focused organization. We just talked about the Harpos match. Minneapolis City, NPSL plus U23 schedules are out, including that Harpos match, and they are packed with goodness, and there is more goodness to come. Now is the right time to grab that membership. It is the best deal in soccer for only $80. You are going to get 10 NPSL home games, 7 U23 games, at least one exclusive preseason friendly, a membership scarf, a membership card that's going to get you deals on Summit at our official game day bar, Palmer's.
So much.
Oh, I'm out of breath. There's too much that it offers. Visit mplscitysc.com and make it happen for yourself. Send us mail. Hey, no mail lately.
Actually, we have one in the hopper that we never from resident content generator Bryn.
Oh, no shit.
That we haven't addressed, but we'll get to that soon, Bryn. Promise.
Pile it on. It's easy. You got to hit us up on Twitter at The People's Pitch, but most people do it through email at mcscpodcast@gmail.com. All of your questions and comments and your concerns are welcome, but if you really have concerns, complain to the club at mplscitysc. And that's all for this week. Once again, we're going to leave you with our house MC, Miles Stockman-Willis, a.k.a. Malaise. I am Nate. That is John. Thank you again to Mr. Bizworm. Make sure to get those memberships, friends, to get to that Harpos match in April.
And you got it.
I see the real you, yeah, boo, I found you. So don't ever frown when loneliness is around you. I'ma show you that someone should crown you, not clown you, but pursue virtue would never hurt you. Critical in distance, touch is digital, biblical. Till death, love is unconditional. Telling us we're a team and not two individuals. For you, I give my spleen, the spiritual and the physical. Loving what is fragile isn't always fixable, but I see what's invisible. See it with vex visuals. Grab my hand, hold it. We gon' think the unthinkable. I promise we will float, that our boat's unsinkable. I promise I'ma drown in you, let you drown in me. Reveal the recipe, you I love to overfeed. I love it. Let's proceed slowly, not go bad like moldy. Ravioli, rigatoni. Girl, I'm free falling for you. Still, temptation follows free. Just tell me when you fall for me, please. Just tell me when you fall. Free. Girl, I'm free falling for you. Still, temptation follows free. Just tell me when you fall for me, please. Just tell me when you fall. Temptation's about to give in, but I'm staying true. If I sin, may I be forgiven for a few. What we got to lose? Nothing. You just gotta listen. Such a good girl. Great. Just made a bad decision. One and done. She looking fine. Nothing missing. But got my hands tied like I'm the villain. Evil only swallows pride, but I'm sometimes kidding. Finger licker kitty after feed the kittens. Cute shit. Kiss me softer than a baby's grip. New sense of high when she bites her lower lip. If she quit, make my heart skip, then snip. When we're together like ice cream mixed with some mint pepper. Shawty had to rescue my respiratory. Wants a man who's a man, that is mandatory. Only without her off the pad, like I never met with Dory. Help her write her story, take the qualms out her quarry. Girl, I'm free falling for you. Still, temptation follows free. Just tell me when you fall for me, please. Just tell me when you fall. Girl, I'm free falling for you. Still, temptation follows free. Just tell me when you fall for me, please. Just tell me when you fall. Selfie Thomas as the rollie. Always be my plus one. Shawty is my bogey. In it for the long haul, not for the trophy. Every day, feeling greater than Tony. Falling for her, and I think she falling for me too. I hope falling like two B's, make a W. Type of dude to build you up and make the rubble move. Type of dude to have my phone out all in front of you. Only cause you got my back. Presence always sets the mood. Never starts any trouble without any proof. No problems if there was, make the puzzle poof. Laugh it off. Goofballs, you should see the spoof. Girl, I'm free falling for you. Still, temptation follows free. Just tell me when you fall for me, please. Just tell me when you fall. Free. Girl, I'm free falling for you. Still, temptation follows free.